Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions. This one's going to be a bit of a bonus episode, an addendum of sorts to what we checked out yesterday, which was Dire Straits, Sultans of Swing. Plenty of comments came in letting me know that I had listened to a shortened version. And the funny thing is, my patrons let me know about this beforehand, and somehow I still ended up listening to the one that did the fade out during the guitar solo at the end, the radio edit. So, we are going to listen to the album version right here. We're going to start at about 3.5 minutes in. I still have the song fairly fresh in my memory, so we're just going to basically check out the ending that was cut off for me yesterday, unfortunately. All right, let's get into this. Let's see what Dire Straits were doing at the end of this song that might have helped fill in the blank and made me not so infuriated at the the fade out during the solo. It is groovy though. It is a very groovy track.
And then the man steps right up to the microphone and says at last, just as the time bell rings, Good night, now it's time to go home. Then he makes it fast with one more thing. We are the Sultans. We are the Sultans of Swing.
Ooh. So it still had a fade out. It would just faded out on that chorus riff that we had heard a couple of times already. So yeah, I kind of expected with all of the rage, you missed the ending. Like, yeah, I mean, I do think I missed a very big part of the track. That is 100% certain. But I don't really think it changed much about the song, other than the fact actually having one, knowing this in retrospective, this is dang, it just said his name too. David Knopfler, which we just heard on a Ruth Moody track, I think, a few weeks back. So that is interesting, and it also makes me recontextualize what I was listening to here. I had mentioned that there is some call and response between the guitar and the vocals, and it's very much the same thing I talked about. I'm pretty sure it was the Ruth Moody track that featured David Knopfler on it. Had that same kind of vibe. It also had a lot of these tighter rhythmic structures. The da-da-dun, da-da-da-dun-dun, da-da-da-dun. He puts a lot of space and breathing in this song and in the other one. So yeah, it brings a new comparative aspect listening to this Dire Straits song, because I've actually heard his works, a bit more of a modern take on it. But I've heard his works before. You know, I have something to compare this to other than just exploring it entirely in a vacuum. So being able to hear his solo helped contextualize some of that. But I also liked how the solo allowed the song to gain some momentum. Like a lot of the song sort of had this groovy element to it. There were a couple of aspects where we saw a little bit of movement, but for the most part, it's just a groovy track. We have these not entirely so catchy vocal lines. There really isn't what I would say is a hook in the vocals, which is interesting, at least coming at it retrospectively. I don't know what times were like in the 70s, but modern day, the hook in a lot of popular mainstream music, I don't know how popular Dire Straits were, but they were a big rock band at least. I don't know where they fit in the larger musical context discussion, but at least in rock, I mean, they're a huge band. And the hook not being in the vocals, but being in the guitar. This is something I didn't talk about yesterday, I don't think, but it's a really interesting twist. I recognize that one lick a lot more than I recognize anything else in the track. But yeah, so we get to hear the music breathe and expand a little bit more in that solo section that we really didn't get to see too much of in the rest of the song, what we listened to yesterday. It really was more of an accompanying aspect to the vocals. A lot of the musical aspects were either groove or they were in relationship to what the vocals were doing, the call and response. The only time that differed was when the lick came in the chorus. That was the only part that I think the musical aspect and the melodic aspect really stood on its own 2 feet and wasn't more of a foundational or secondary part of the song. Then we get the solo at the end and it completely changes that. It subverts the entire song and includes a section for a musical instrument to take lead melody for an extended period of time. So yeah, like I said, it's not, I don't think it changes my views on the song as a whole too widely. But to me, at least, it's an important part of the song that elevates it above where I had put it. To me, it was an interesting, groovy song. I wouldn't mind listening to it again, but it's not anything I would actively seek out. The guitar solo makes me push it up a little bit more on my listening. You know, I might go and check out more Dire Straits stuff having heard that because there's more musicality in there. So let's dig into a little bit of Mark's playing here and explore what's going on real quick. I think this is going to be it. Like I said, this is going to be a short addendum to what we checked out yesterday. If you want to see the full reaction, the link is right there, I guess. But yeah, so let's talk about what the guitar solo is doing and how it can be seen as a contrasting element to what we had listened to in the previous 4 minutes of the track. One thing that I absolutely love about Mark's playing is flow. And this is something that I think I talked about in the Ruth Moody. I really hope it was Ruth Moody. I gotta... Wait a second. Okay, so I had it backwards. This is Mark Knopfler, not David Knopfler. They're both in the band, but Mark is the lead guitarist. David is the rhythm guitarist, and Mark is the one who appeared on it was the Ruth Moody track. Okay, so I've got that straightened out now. I apologize for all the confusion that might have been in the last 3 minutes calling him David. This is Mark. So yeah, something about Mark's playing though is, well, there's 2 things. I don't remember what I was talking about first, so we're just going to go into flow, right? He has this phenomenal way of crafting a melody line, extended, not like 4-bar phrases. He looks at the entire guitar solo or even the entire verse. We can look at some of the flourishes that he put in during the verse of this track, in very linear ideas. He sees these as, extended moments to write a story, to tell a story through his instrument from beginning to end without any looping or, heavy breaks. And this is something I've talked about in the past. It's something that I've seen a lot in metal and rock solos is you'll have 4 bars. Well, you'll be able to hear the break between ideas. So you might have 4 bars of in something more technical, 4 bars of sweeping, and then 4 bars of tapping, and then 4 bars of something a little bit more melodic. And there's a lot of guitar solos I've heard where you can just sort of there's not a strong transition between ideas. You can feel the building blocks of the solo. Might be a way to say that. And with Mark, everything seems to naturally flow into one another. There is um, almost like storytelling, right? So when you're telling a story, you have your rising action, you have your climax, and then you have your denouement, your falling falling action. I don't know how that translates. The conclusion, though, to finish off the song or to finish off the story in that sense. And Mark has a very great take on doing this in this song, at least, where he starts off utilizing a lot of the rhythmic ideas we've already been accustomed to hearing. Like I said, those little short little breaks, the da 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 da, those little staccato pockets of sound, maybe only a beat or a beat and a half each, and he starts the solo off with a few of these. He'll play something and then let it breathe, and then play something and then let it breathe, and he puts these rests between these lines. But the rests between these licks are constantly decreasing. We're getting the lick more and more often until eventually we have this extended multi-finger strumming thing going on. Maybe tap. I don't. It's something like that. And we get into this section, and he just starts shredding. But it's not something that feels like, oh, we did 4 bars of this part, and now we're doing the shredding section. We naturally came into it. The transition into it was natural, and we even had a sort of a pickup idea where beat 4 of the bar prior was the beginning of this idea. We started one of those licks, but instead of putting a rest after it, he just kind of continued with it. It was a very natural extension of the idea we were just previously in. And I don't think I would have to go back and really listen for it, but it wasn't evident that we were working within 4 bar phrases either. I'm not sure what bar we started the shredding moment on, but like I said, it didn't feel to me like we were working within foundational blocks. It felt like just a natural extension of the idea. And I even like how he took this fast moving concept, and when we finished out the solo section, I wasn't really sure that we were moving back into the other because they kind of bled into each other. The solo became some of that embellishing ornamental playing that led back into that chorus riff, that main hook. So yeah, just the way that he crafts his solo, the melody line, and you can hear it in the vocals as well. You can hear this in sort of a microcosm of each verse section, how he increases the tension throughout, and then we finish. Well, it's less of a bell curve coming back down, but he brings it up, brings the intensity up until it matches where we're going into the chorus. So yeah, he has a phenomenal flow about the way that he crafts a melody. But I also love that he allows space to breathe. So guitar doesn't need breaks, not like an aerophone would. If you're playing a trumpet or a clarinet or something, aside from circulatory breathing, you need to take breaths. Circulatory breathing, I mean, we've seen a 7-minute saxophone song before when we checked out Colin Stetson. So I'm not saying it's impossible to play a song without breaks on an aerophone, but it's less popular of an idea. Most people can't keep circulatory breathing up for several minutes. It is a difficult skill to have that sort of endurance for. But with guitars, you don't have anything stopping you from playing constantly other than muscular endurance, just continuing to strum or continuing to fret. So I don't know if that has something to play into. I think I've talked about this before, but for whatever reason, guitars have kind of moved into a direction of constant sound. Rock and metal so very rarely uses the rest. In fact, usually we'll only hear rests for a brief moment to punctuate possibly a sudden change. Tech death, I hear this a lot, where they'll do, if it's in 4/4, they'll do 3 beats to finish off their last idea, have silence on that fourth beat, maybe just a snare hit, and then on the beat one of the next bar, they're going to their next idea, which is usually even more intense. So they use the rest to break up the intensity, but it's very functional in that use. It's not designed for what it typically or originally was designed for. No, that's a wrong way to say it. Not originally designed for, but one of its uses, especially with aerophones, is to allow the performers to take a breath. And here, it's used functionally to create space in the song. But we don't see it much other than that, especially when it comes to guitar solos. Whether it's a slower guitar solo or a more technical guitar solo, there just really isn't a lot of rests in rock and metal. You look at jazz guitarists, and you're going to see rest all over the place. Because, at least for jazz, there's an understanding that the times that you don't play are just as important and just as meaningful as when you do play. And in rock and metal, either they don't value the same thing, or I think that's it. They just don't value the same thing. Rock and metal is more about the intensity, the aggressiveness, or the weight of it, and a lot of these come down to constant playing. And I even talked a little bit about whether this song was swing or not in the last video, and I think having that jazz influence really shines through in Mark's playing. Thinking about the way that he used rests and the way that he crafts melody line, it makes me wonder if he wasn't influenced by or listened to a lot of jazz growing up. The more I think about his guitar playing, makes me think that he listened to a lot of jazz guitarists, either growing up or possibly even just in his formative years. It didn't necessarily need to be his childhood, but definitely probably as a teenager, once he started picking up the guitar, that was the kind of guitarist that he listened to. And yeah, it's kind of strange. I didn't touch on I didn't touch on it because of we didn't listen to the solo. That's why I didn't touch on it. But we did talk about how the drummer I felt was very jazz inspired. And the more I think about it, this is a jazz band. They had a rock audience, they had a rock and roll feel, but I mentioned they were a bridge between rock and jazz possibly, and the more I think about it, and the more I'm learning about this group and this song specifically, now that I've heard the whole thing, I really do think it leans a little bit more towards jazz. However, that's not without their rock sensibilities. I did see that there were a couple of 10-minute live renditions of the Sultans of Swing. And a couple of people told me that he does extended solos when they do the song live. So I'm guessing that those extra 4.5 minutes in those live ones are extended solo sections, which, depending on how it goes, at least to me, feels very rock. I guess I might listen to one of those on my own time and see what's going on. But yeah, I mean, like I said, they're a bridge between jazz and rock. So I think that's going to be everything. This was an extra, like an extra 20 minutes worth of stuff that I could have talked about yesterday. I really do apologize for getting the wrong track yesterday and getting a cut down edited version. That is not cool of them to even release it, but it's definitely not cool that was the one that I ended up getting picked for the reaction. It made less of an interesting analysis out of it. So hopefully this added more to yesterday's, and the people who are like, you totally missed it, hopefully this fills in that space and appeases y'all as much as it made me happy to hear an actual, solo in here. to hear more musicality. I'm still not a big fan of the fade out, but I'd much rather fade out on a chorus than fade out on a guitar solo. That is just not cool. So those are my thoughts on the true ending of Sultans of Swing. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this one. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, you know, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do a proper sign off with all that since this is a bonus video, but we do have more videos coming out today, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.